The Beatles' trip to India in 1968 has always fascinated me, and I think the most fascinating thing of all is the fact that they were inspired to write about 30 or 40 new songs when they were there. And I'm sure it was due to a combination of a lot of things, but I think it all began with the fact that they were in a whole new environment. Yeah, it was a great big change of scene for John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and it wasn't the first time that a change of scene had inspired one of these guys. I mean, didn't John write Strawberry Fields Forever on the set of How I Won the War? I mean, he wasn't Beatle John. He was just John. He was play acting. There was a lot of downtime there, and so he probably got in touch with something deep inside of him. And he wrote this very introspective song, Strawberry Fields Forever. And I know it's not the same thing there in Rishikesh, but it kind of sort of is, but on a much grander scale, because here's the Beatles, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, like they're at this retreat, like getting away from it all, leave all their cares behind them, and maybe even forgetting that they were the Beatles for maybe just a minute or two at this ashram. It was kind of rustic. It was out there in the jungle, completely surrounded by nature, and they could leave a lot of their problems behind. And they really needed to do that by February of 1968, because ever since August of 1967, Brian Epstein's death, they had been accumulating a lot of personal and professional problems that were really tearing them apart. It was like a pressure cooker for them. So here's these guys in Rishikesh at this meditation retreat, and all they had to do was just learn how to meditate and attend lectures and eat and sleep and meditate and just kind of hang around. And I think because they were able to do that and forget about being a Beatles and not have all those pressures on them, they're doing all this inner work and they're forgetting about all that crap. I think that they got out of their heads and they got back into their hearts and remembered who they were. And they're not really just the Beatles, they're John, Paul, George, and Ringo, these individuals. And their individual creative spark reignited there in Rishikesh. And they remembered that we are these uniquely gifted, amazing creative artists and musicians, man, okay? And so, that genie is not going back in that bottle, that pressure cooker, it was just released, okay? And they're not going to go back to being the same. They're not going back to be the same Beatles that they were. Maybe not even the same John, Paul, George, and Ringo that they were. Yeah, because everything changed because they were able to get away from it all and get away from being a Beatle. Remember that they were John, Paul, George, and Ringo. And they were able to breathe out there in all this great big open space. And when you are when you're an artist, okay, when you're an artist, you're kind of open and you're like a sponge and you want to soak everything up. And, you're easily influenced and you're turned on by and there's all these groovy people there. And so there's a lot of stuff happening and a lot of influences and inspiration and exciting stuff happening, man. Okay. And, it was fun for them. And it looked like it was fun to me because you could see in the beginning how when they first got there, they were still in their hippie garb, etc. But after a while, they got into the local garb. And they're letting their beards grow and they're painting their faces. They're walking around with their guitars and they're doing all these sing-alongs. And kind of looks to me like they're remembering that making music is fun. And when you see them, when you see those guys sitting on top of their roof, on the roof of their bungalow there, and they're all gathered around, they're making music, and they're all huddled close together, and they're just rehearsing probably all day long, just doing nothing but making music. They do look like they're those kids again. They probably remembered that, hey man, we like making music and this is fun. And no wonder they didn't want to go back to being who they were again after they'd rediscovered making music is fun. And hey, this is me and I'm super creative. And before you know it, all these songs just start coming out, man. And with John is this veritable creative fountain and there's just no stopping him there in Rishikesh. He writes songs like Revolution, I'm So Tired, Mean Mr. Mustard, Paul, Thane, Pam, Julia, Dear Prudence, and Paul. Very much the same thing. There's all kinds of songs that Paul writes, both of them writing songs that reflect all the different sides of them. With Paul, it's Junk, I Will, Mother Nature's Son, Obla Di, Obla Da, Back in the USSR, Rocky Raccoon, and Wild Honey Pie. I love Wild Honey Pie, man. And with George remembers that he loves playing the guitar. He remembers that he's a guitarist. And George writes songs that are kind of personal to him, like Sour Milk Sea, Circles, Dare Dune. And there in Rishikesh, it's kind of it's just like the first domino. And even after they get back, the dominoes kind of begin to fall. And yeah, they write more songs that wind up on the White Album. But those aren't the only dominoes that kind of fall, because like I said, something changed there when they remembered like who they were. And a lot of the pressure was released, like with John. Okay, he had a lot of inner turmoil there. He was holding a lot of stuff back, but after Rishikesh, he wasn't holding back anymore. He just got rid of all that stuff. And he said he was married before, he was with Cynthia before, but after that, no. No, he left Cynthia and all that, and he was with Yoko. And the same thing with Paul. Paul went there with Jane. They were engaged, but a few months later, not engaged to Jane anymore. And with George, like I said, he remembered that he was a guitar player. And he was like, hey man, I know who I am now. And I have something to say. And I'm feeling something, I'm experiencing something very important to me. So George really found his voice there in India. And Ringo, I think, had kind of like a delayed response there, because Ringo didn't have the same experience there.
The food was impossible for me because, you know, I'm allergic to so many different things that I took 2 suitcases with me, one of clothes and one of Heinz beans. There's a plug for you.
Okay, everybody stayed longer than Ringo. Ringo left and went home, and I kind of wonder there when they were, you know, making the White Album, that maybe John, Paul, and George were talking about India and their experiences and talking about and being all excited about all the songs that they wrote when they were there. And after, maybe Ringo's sitting there going, hey man, you know, I'm just as good as you guys. I might not have written all those songs, man, but hey, I know who I am now too. And I'm important. I'm Ringo Starr, man, and I'm not digging all this stuff. So I'm getting the heck out of here. I'm going on my own retreat here, and I'm inspired to write my own timeless song here. And guess what song he writes? Octopus's Garden, a song about getting away from it all. It's just fantastic, isn't it? I think it's this perfect storm, like the perfect time and the perfect place for them to kind of get out of their heads and back into their hearts. The Esher Demos that they lay down after they get back from Rishikesh, they all have kind of a loose feel about them, and they all seem very different from what they'd written before. Now, I'm not saying, you know, they haven't changed and evolved over the years, but this is very different. It's a big change, in my opinion, because, you know, a lot of these songs, you know, they are very introspective, and they tell the stories about what happened there in Rishikesh. And yes, some of them are a lot of fun as well. And even when they're recording, they're having a lot of fun, and they're all supporting one another. They all sound like they're having a fantastic time. But there's something else happening here. You can tell that there's something about to change, just like with the early Beatles songs. You know, when you first heard those songs, like written in 1963, you could tell something's going to change. And I think when I hear those Esher Demos and the White Album stuff, you know, it's like something is changing. Something is happening here. Something is different. And the White Album, I think it does succeed in capturing, you know, that loose feel, like some of that back to basics, as well as capturing the fact that these are John, Paul, George, and Ringo. These are, a lot of the tracks feel very John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and also some feel very Beatley to me as well. And those individual type songs, they kind of point the way to their eventual solo careers in the future. You know, the Beatles, they really do embrace change. I mean, change is always good to them. In a lot of ways, change embraces them. I just think it's fascinating that they traveled so far to rediscover who they were, to eventually find themselves again.
Because that was the purpose of going there, to try and find who yourself really is.
Yes, well, we found that, didn't we?
And if you were really yourself, you wouldn't be any of who we are now.
What I think I love the most about all this is they remembered who they were, and they got back into their hearts and stayed there. Good for them. Thank you so much for being here with me today, out here in nature, in my own change of scene. And until next time, peace. Love one another. Take care.